We here, nigga. Realest niggas by landslide. Show enough, I'm about to blow up, cause I'm tired of walking around landmines. Rap savior, hellraiser, don't worry, nigga, I claim both. One nigga that's unsigned, that's off the chain. Django.
How does going from 4 to 12 team playoff format impact college football in its totality?
I think it's a good idea because a lot of teams get left out that's deserving to be in the college football playoffs. We have years of teams that have went undefeated, that have won their conference, that have beat big time programs that have been left out due to the ranking system, due to favorites, preseason rankings. You know, in my opinion, I feel like the college football is biased towards SEC. You know, and that's what it boils down to, because if you look at the preseason rankings, they're going to dominate the preseason rankings. All they got to do is basically not lose. Well, you got other conferences that don't even really get a shot no matter what happens. Like the USCs of the world, like these teams are needed, in my opinion, for college football to be how great it is. You need them teams from California. You need the teams from Michigan, Ohio, Florida, Texas in order to make college football great. And a lot of times we see a lot of them teams get left out. So I think moving to the new system is important because it allows other programs a chance to at least be able to compete for a championship. You know, what's your thoughts about it?
Of course, I definitely do agree. If the audience can remember that we went to lengths about this in our very first podcast when we discussed the college football playoff system being at 4, and I accurately predicted that it would expand. And sure enough, it expanded far past what we discussed, past 8 to 12 teams. Mm-hmm. So as like, you know, we was discussing with Josh, like, you know, what does it go to? The top 4 teams get a bye week, 18 matchup, and things of that nature. Mm-hmm. But of course, I definitely disagree in some aspects because, like I also mentioned, great players in the states of California and the teams that is in these other conferences, you know, they're at Alabama. They are at Ohio State and Michigan and things of that nature. So the ability to expand to a bigger playoff field gives, you know, teams like you said, USC and these teams that's getting left out, like I said, the top 5 power conferences along with the Big East, who's like right there, and then you kind of can get at-large bids. Like, you know, you might have a situation to where SEC schools still get, you know, multiple 2-loss teams in or whatever the case may be. Mm-hmm. I'm fine with that. You know, if, you know, other conferences complain past the 12-team playoff format, it's not really even an argument anymore because, you know, if you win your conference championship, more than likely you are a top 15 to top 10 school ranked. So you should be able to get in. So I don't see any kind of way that all top conferences are satisfied in this regard and that everybody kind of gets what they want. If it becomes the SEC Invitational, so be it. Like if you get a 2-loss Georgia team in or a 2-loss Texas A&M in or 2-loss Florida in. Oh, well, same for the Big Ten. Like, I mean, the Big Ten is not out of that discussion as well. They're getting a 2-loss Michigan in, a 2-loss Ohio State in, who I felt like should have been deserving. Because if we watched the Rose Bowl last year, I feel like Ohio State would have put a better fight up in that first round of the college football playoffs than either of the 2 teams that faced off against Alabama and Georgia. And that's a fact. And they went against a tough Utah team who I feel like maybe even Utah could have put up a better battle against Georgia and Alabama. Maybe not, but, you know, I know for a fact Ohio State would have. So I definitely agree. I think this is a positive outlook for college football. And like you said, every conference can kind of make a name for themselves and kind of put their conference on the map to where it can kind of level the playing field recruiting-wise and transfer portal-wise as well, as you can see in USC's case.
Right, exactly. With Lincoln Riley going to USC, Caleb Williams going to USC. that forced Spencer Rattler to go to South Carolina, so he becomes the second, third best quarterback in the SEC. So you got all this movement that creates a more parity within college football that a lot more teams are able to compete that weren't able to compete before. But in addition to that, this is what you were saying. The point I want to touch on is the fact that it enables. I'm not sure how it's going to look. Now, like you said, it could very well be 4, 5 SEC schools inside the college football playoffs. Because like I said, I feel like SEC is the college football in general is biased towards SEC schools. That's just how I feel. That's how I've been feeling for the last 5 or 6 years. However, with that being said, I understand why, but those other programs that are moving towards bigger conferences, I think that also creates a very unique situation in college football, to where if you have USC, for example, moving to the Big Ten, how does that look, versus them playing in the Pac-12? If you got 2 losses in the Big Ten, you might only have 1 loss if you played in the Pac-12. So that creates a lot of interesting matchups that we never seen before. Like, we're not used to seeing Alabama go against Texas. Alabama went to Texas and struggled Saturday. Won by 1 point, 20-19. Mm-hmm. So that creates a very unique situation in college football, to where you got teams traveling across the country and different time zones to play teams as if this is the NFL. And we all know an East Coast team traveling to a West Coast team and vice versa does create some, obstacles that teams have to go over, especially going, across the country. So I know it's just interesting to see how college football balances this out, because, as of right now, there's a lot of teams that are going to have to compete against teams they never played before. They don't know styles of play. They don't know personnel. Like, for example, the Big 12 style of play, the program, the conference versus the SEC is completely different. We know the Big 12 don't care about defense. You got all these high scoring teams like Texas Tech and BYU, not BYU, I'm sorry, Iowa State, that will put up a lot of points, but they ain't really put a lot of emphasis on defense, where you have the SEC that's going to focus on defense and running the ball and things like that, but also have the ability to beat you deep. So, it just creates a unique characteristic in college football, where you got the intermixing of conferences and matchups that we will only see during bowl season. So we get a chance to really be able to sit back and be like, damn, Florida got to go play Oklahoma this weekend. That might be a unique matchup for both teams, seeing how they adjust their schedules and things like that. So.
But it definitely is interesting, but I kind of feel like that's the reason that the 12-team format is going to be so successful, because think about how UCLA and USC going to the Big Ten and Oklahoma and Texas going to the SEC. If you were to kind of feel like, okay, what was the purpose of them moving the conference? Because they felt like they never had an opportunity to play on the big stage in the college football playoff.
Right.
So you got to go to a different conference to kind of put your name on the bigger stage.
Right.
So what the 12-team playoff actually does, in my opinion, is that it takes it to where, okay, you got all of these big teams and piled up into these 2 major conferences. So that's the 12-team format is going to allow 2 losses to get in now.
Yeah.
Like, it's going to allow multiple teams to still break that barrier, with also allowing teams that win your conference to also get in. So it's plenty of space to actually get more teams in. Now, take it back. If we were still, let's like hypothetically say that the college football playoff system went to 8, maybe that still would have been an issue with UCLA and USC going to the Big Ten and Texas and Oklahoma going to the SEC. But now that it's at 12, like, it's no excuse. If it becomes the SEC Invitational again, that's on other teams to kind of get to where they need to be, because now that it's in the 12-team playoff system, everybody gets the opportunity to recruit. Nobody's out of it.
Right.
All teams that win your conference should get in, hypothetically, because if you think about it, all of these teams are playing each other.
Right.
Like somebody, like nobody's going undefeated, or nobody, you know what I'm saying, should like, you know, separate themselves that far away from each other to where they should be beating up on each other. So these other teams and other conferences will be ranked higher, hypothetically, say for instance, they do run the table. Like who's left in the Pac-12? I don't know. Or ACC.
Washington.
Like if one of these teams go undefeated,
Arizona,
they should be ranked high.
Yeah, they should.
Due to the war of attrition. So I think it's beautiful, man. I think it's gonna work out perfectly, and in turn, like it should be good for the college football landscape as far as the transfer portal. I'm interested to see it. I'm also happy that these teams that are transferring to different conferences brought the neighboring school with them to kind of keep that rivalry going. For those major rivalries, it's nothing to schedule out of conference that you can do that as well. So it's definitely a good thing. I got excited when I found out, you know, USC and UCLA was coming to the Big Ten, because that's gonna bolster the Big Ten. Like, I agree. To stay on par with the SEC with the moves that they're making. So I think we're gonna have an excellent conference. And I think college football is in great shape.
Right, and I'm glad you're on the point about bringing their rival schools, because certain rivalries in football we need. We need Oklahoma and Texas. We need USC and UCLA. We need Alabama versus Auburn. We need Miami versus Florida. We need Michigan versus Ohio State. So, you know, being able to still have the rivalry games, or at the end of the season, which is called rivalry week, being able to have those games, but still be able to put on an exciting show throughout the season is important, because, you know, week to week, you know, matchups may happen, as opposed to, say, let's use Michigan. I'm from Michigan. That's the school I love. Instead of them having to play somebody like Purdue, that somebody might not watch, they might have to go play USC. That creates a much bigger storyline, considering that we played them so many times in the Rose Bowl and things like that, as opposed to us playing somebody like Purdue. Same thing for Alabama. Alabama playing Oklahoma is a much bigger storyline than them playing Mississippi State. You know, no offense to Mississippi State, but, you know, it's just not a appealing storyline that people would like to, you know, listen to. But yeah, you know, college football, I think it's in a good spot with the 12 teams. I would like to see them keep it at 12. I don't want to expand it further than that. I don't want it to be like college basketball, where you got hundreds of teams in, and then you got to narrow down the field from down to 64, then 32, then 16. That's a little bit too much. Like 12, I think 12 is a pretty solid number. You get your 3 rounds in, maybe, and then, you know, you get to the big game. But yeah. My biggest thing about the college football playoffs is that every other program, every other sport, if you win your conference, if you win your division, you win your if you win any type of accolades as a team, most of the time you're in some type of playoff system. College basketball, NBA, NHL, baseball, it doesn't matter. College football was the only program where you can win your conference and you can go home the next week. Like, so I do appreciate college football for moving towards, you know, a more inclusive system to include more teams in, because you never know what could happen. Any given Saturday, a team could be upset. We don't see Utah go and beat Alabama. We don't see Appalachian State beat Michigan. So, you know, anything can happen, you know, in between the games.
Right, and to further the point, like, now you can kind of get that mid-major team that's been knocking at the door in the rankings, right, like the
Cincinnati.
Boise States or the Cincinnati's, or the, you know what I'm saying, these teams that are not Power 5 conferences now have no excuse. They'll get their opportunities. I suspect that undefeated at-large bid with 12 teams getting in the playoffs should get past a 2-loss team at the very minimum. So I'm encouraged about that, hopefully. Quickly moving on, before we move on off college football, let's get a quick prediction on, like, kind of what we seeing this season, and kind of like what we predict as far as like who we see as the favorites early on, like what we seeing from college football so far. What you think?
All right, so let's start with the different conferences. We want to start with the Big Ten first. Y'all love start with
I mean,
the
it
Big
could
Ten.
be anybody. Like who you think is like the top 4 teams that you kind of like seeing out there so far?
I'm gonna go with Georgia. I think Georgia boasts the best defense across college football, but they have a more than capable offense with Stetson Bennett. He's really grown that next level after winning the championship the previous year. Number two probably is going to be Alabama. They did find a way to beat Texas this previous weekend. They boast a Heisman candidate and Bryce Young, who's probably going to be the first overall pick in his draft class. Still boasts a pretty explosive defense and offense. Third would probably be Ohio State. You got C.J. Stroud coming back. He's the Heisman front runner right now. He lost a trio of receivers, so it's interesting to see how y'all make that adjustment at receiver. But we all know what happens at the Horseshoe. You know, it's a very well-round program. Four, it's going to be Michigan. Our ground attack is leading the way right now, especially with Blake Corum. So it's interesting to see how our defense hold up when we play Ohio State again. Hopefully we get part 2. And then fifth team, it's going to be a shocker. I'm going with USC all the way over in Pac-12. Lincoln Riley over there. You got Caleb Williams over there, who's probably going to be a top pick when he doing his class. I feel like he got a lot of recruits that came from Oklahoma over there as well. Mm-hmm. So, Clemson's not looking as strong as it has looked over the last 5 or 6 years, from the Deshaun Watson era to the Trevor Lawrence era. It hasn't looked as strong as it once did. But Clemson's still a very good program. You got Clemson, a surprise program right now, Florida. Florida looks very good. But that would be my projection. If you ask me right now, you put a gun to my head, I'd probably tell you Georgia will repeat. But I know it's very hard to repeat in college football. So we'll see.
I definitely agree with Alabama being in the top mix. I'm going to definitely go Ohio State. Will probably be the second best team. I'm going to take this back. I'm going to say whoever wins between Alabama and Georgia in the SEC championship will probably get the first spot. I'm going to go with Ohio State as the second best team in the country from what I've seen. I disagree. I think C.J. Stroud is the best quarterback in the country. I'm being biased, but I'm not. Because I think C.J. Stroud,
like you being biased. From
what I've analyzed on both of those quarterbacks, C.J. Stroud has a stronger. He has a. I'm talking about just last year and this year. I'm saying I think C.J. Stroud is more accurate. I think he throws a better deep ball. I think he throws a prettier deep ball, and he has a stronger arm. I'm not saying that.
I agree with you there.
I think they're going to go 1 and 2 like in this next draft. Like whoever needs a quarterback, they easily going 1 and 2. Like that's just my prediction.
I wouldn't be surprised if Bryce come back. Bryce is going to his sophomore year,
so both of them
so
be eligible.
He can forego his junior year. So I wouldn't be surprised if Bryce come back a year. But I agree, both probably are going top 5 picks. But CJ don't got Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave out there throwing to him anymore.
I like our receiving core. We got Marvin Harrison Jr. and we also have Smith and Jibba, who is a top receiver in the country, and a top tight end as well. I like our offense. I like Ohio State. I like I don't think two Big Ten teams are gonna get in. It could be tricky. Like both Ohio State and Michigan will need to be undefeated when they play each other, and then the loser. I take that back. Ohio State would need if Michigan beats Ohio State would need Notre Dame not to lose no more. Like Notre Dame just lost their second game, so they need that win to mean something out of conference. So I don't think two Big Ten teams are getting in. So I'm gonna go with
two loss. I mean, you
No,
don't think a two-loss?
No,
You
I
think a
think
two-loss?
I don't think a one-loss team would get in. I think a one-loss SEC team would get in over the Big Ten. So I would go.
I disagree. A one-loss. It depends who the one-loss team is. If it's a one-loss Ole Miss and a one-loss Michigan,
But you
I
know,
think it'd
we
be
talking
Michigan.
Georgia and Alabama. So
Yeah, I agree,
if
I
both
agree.
teams have
I
one
agree.
loss and the other team is out, who would they take? A one-loss Michigan or Ohio State, or
But-
a one-loss Alabama and Georgia?
But with 12 teams now,
I'm talking about. We talking about this year for 4 teams.
you're probably right.
So I'm saying Ohio State,
you're right,
Alabama, maybe the loser of the SEC, and I'm gonna go USC as the 4th team because I think they can potentially run the table.
Yeah, I think they can run the table as well. I
And
got
if
to look at their
they do-
schedule again. I do think they can run the table.
If they do, I think they have they got the preseason boost, and I think they got the next best chance to go unbeaten. I think the Big 12 won't go unbeaten. I don't think the ACC is gonna have undefeated schools.
Clemson having a solid season though. They just blew out.
But
somebody.
the quarterback, DJ, he don't.
I'm not doubting Dabo Swinney. I feel like he's a top 3 coach.
I think he don't have a good defense, but you know.
But you
That's
know
just
what?
one
I
little
could see a one-loss Big Ten school getting it. I can see it. I can see if Ohio
over
State
a 2-loss SEC school, yeah, but not over a 1-loss.
No, it's gonna be 2 SEC schools.
No. But I mean, if another
be,
conference go undefeated, I don't think they would get in. Just like how Cincinnati got in. Just how like
you're right.
Notre Dame will get in. Like I mean, any out of conference team that's in a Power 5 conference to go unbeaten, they'll get in.
You're right.
Big 12.
You're
like,
right.
you know.
I agree with you there. You're right. Unless Alabama every now and then have a win game, especially against Ole Miss, whether it's Ole Miss, whether it's at Auburn, they'll drop a game every now and then. So I don't think a 2-loss Alabama get in, but it's gonna be interesting to see the SEC championship because I'm already predicting it's gonna be Georgia versus Alabama. I just don't see nobody beating them this year in the SEC. Did you see what Georgia just did to South Carolina?
Alabama got a tough schedule coming up.
I agree. Don't say it.
They got a couple games.
If a team was to lose, it'd probably be Alabama. I can see them lose because I feel like Bryce Young doesn't handle pressure well. I feel like he makes some rash decisions and that kind of puts him in a bad position. And he don't have Jamison Williams and stuff and folks out there he throwing to this particular year. So it'd be interesting. Like I said, they probably should have lost that Texas game, but they found a way to win. So it's in the past.
Yeah, but speaking of Jamison, let's move to the NFL.